Welcome to the YOUnify podcast. If you're new here, YOUnify is a nonprofit organization. We are dedicated to helping you flourish and thrive. My name is Brandyn Keating, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of YOUnify and host of our podcast. Today, we're going to be talking with Linn Davis. Linn helps government officials include regular people's voices in their decision-making as a program director of an organization called Healthy Democracy. Whether you are deep into civic engagement yourself or feel like government's kind of a dumpster fire, or maybe you wouldn't even know where to begin to get involved, or both, you are not going to want to miss this conversation. We are going to be touching on really exciting innovations for how government officials make decisions, and as always, things that you can do in your own daily life to flourish, thrive, and lead, whether you consider yourself a leader right now or not. Linn, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you for fighting through the Los Angeles rain. Not very usual for us, but you're an Oregonian, so you must be kind of used to that, right?
Totally used to it. Feels like home. Thanks for having me here. Lovely to be here. Lovely to see you.
Yeah, lovely to see you too. I'm so glad this worked out. And I also noticed that you rolled up with an instrument. So before we get into all the democracy stuff, what's that little instrument you're carrying? And tell us about it.
It's a tenor ukulele that I carry around as my little travel instrument, and give myself some things to do on the train. I'm doing this whole trip on the train down here for a number of meetings, and it just is. I've had it forever, and it's virtually indestructible, and it is my safety blanket.
Amazing. I love that you have a travel instrument. So will you play us a little tiny tune? You gotta.
Sure. Yeah.
Wow. I had no idea. So I've known Linn for a little while. I had no idea that you had this incredible talent hiding. So what's your favorite song to play?
I play almost all my own songs, so that is copyright free.
You have Linn Davis original music?
Yeah, I don't really learn how to play other folks' music, which is trouble at like a campfire, or just like hanging out with people. I mean, I can play with other folks, but my memory is absolutely terrible. So I instead just kind of make up my own things.
I love this. And do you play in public at all, or just no?
No, it's always really been for myself. I did theater and choir as a kid, all through school and college, but never really always wanted to play in a band. Didn't, just have. Now it's really like my personal meditation.
Oh, I love that. That's amazing. Well, I'm going to call that not yet. It has now become my personal mission to get Linn on a stage. So now I have a new purpose in life.
Oh my gosh.
So Linn, you are one of the people, one of the most passionate people I have ever met about democracy and governance and getting more people involved in the process of policy making.
Oh.
How did you become this guy? Take us back to all the way back to the young Linn.
Yeah, young Linn. I feel like I was passionate about a lot of things. That's kind of where this comes from. I'm passionate about too many things, clearly. And then they were all kind of competing for interest. I spent my 20s sort of bouncing around as well and didn't know. But I think the thing that I eventually discovered in my 30s was that one common thread coming from my parents, who were, sort of in group process related, had that experience from way back in the 60s and 70s through to high school, where I did a senior project on facilitation, actually.
Wow.
Went around to local groups and sort of analyzed their meet, knowing nothing about this at the time, of course, but made a little book about how to facilitate a meeting better.
How?
And then in college, did some other facilitation training kind of stuff, trainings, I mean, and then, but eventually, like I thought I wanted to be a journalist, thought I wanted to be an urban planner, and eventually kind of landed on, what's really passionate to me is actually not any of these things that I care about, but the way that we're able to make decisions about any of those things. What feel to me like the underlying sort of basis here, like there's a rights and a sort of a sort of individual aspect down there, but there's also a sort of group, how we work with other humans, and on top of that is our ability to do anything as a society and all the other things that we all care about.
Amazing. Well, I'm going to come back to this, how we all work with other humans, because I feel like probably a lot of what people are seeing in their social media feeds and in the news right now is some pretty big challenges of humans working together. So we'll come back to that because I really think it's at the essence of, it sounds like your passion and what you're doing with Healthy Democracy. But before we get there, I'm dying to know. I already got one surprise today, which was with the ukulele, the travel ukulele. What's one other thing that might surprise people about you?
Let's see. I mean, it might not surprise them, but I work as a fire lookout in the summertime. I think we've probably been on phone calls when I've been up on this mountain.
Yeah, and I have to say, I wasn't entirely clear about what is a fire lookout.
It's a person who sits in a little glass box on top of a mountain and looks for fires. It's a job that's been around for a very long time.
Wow.
But there used to be a lot more of them in the West in particular, but they still exist. I came back to Oregon about 12 years ago. And just my dad was a lookout for a summer that I think he really loved, and so I always kind of thought, this is fun, this is romantic. Lots of poets have lived in lookouts, and I thought, I'm sure this doesn't exist anymore. So I did kind of search, and no, sure enough, it does. They're volunteer organizations, and they're paid folks who live this sort of little hermit lifestyle on top of a mountain. It is exactly as wonderful as it sounds.
Wow. So then are you the warning system for when fires sprout up? Well, I guess we certainly need that here in Southern California. Very attuned to that based on recent events.
Yeah, I imagine. Yeah, so are we.
Yeah, incredible. All right. Well, Linn Davis, healthy governance warrior, fire lookout, Warner, and ukulele player. Amazing. And I'm sure that's still just scratching the surface. So as you know, one of the things we're really focused on in YOUnify is flourishing. How can we all flourish and thrive, help our communities flourish and thrive? And I'm curious to know from you, what's one thing right now that you're struggling with when it comes to flourishing? And what's one thing that's kind of helping you feel like you're flourishing a bit more?
I mean, I think this won't be unique, but screens are the big thing for me.
Yeah.
A lot of our jobs and sort of relationships with other people are being done digitally, which is wonderful. It makes it, at least in a professional setting, more accessible, less travel, but and more ability to have coworkers from different places and so forth. But geez, it's hard. It's really hard on me mentally. I think it took me a while. I was really into it, sort of in the beginning of COVID, like some folks, and then mentally, it's not great. It's not great.
Yeah.
But whatever, and I've done many different things, worked from different places, and some variety certainly helps. But right now, my goal is I've kind of gone down to halftime at HD at Healthy Democracy, and planning on staying in this world as long as people will have me. But I am just trying to diversify with other things, so being in the forest more, or doing music or other creative, artistic stuff, and or being out with people, doing people things in Portland, where I live, or in other places in person, feels like such a luxury.
Yeah.
So I think that's and I guess that's sort of the other answer to the question too, is just making. I bought a chainsaw recently. I'm getting chainsaw trained.
Wow.
Maybe make a little side money.
What are you going? Is this for building furniture, or what are we doing with the chainsaw?
TBD.
All right, I'll stay on your good side.
There is some great chainsaw artists in Oregon, though. So I'm inspired. No, I think it's going to be very practical.
Yeah.
Very practical, helping people out who live out in the country, or cutting firewood or whatever. But
amazing. I love this. And I love the idea of diversifying. I know for me, I was just glued to my seat so much at my desk and on the Zoom all day and into the evening during the pandemic. And I've really tried to even just get out of my seat and take a call the old-fashioned way on the phone instead of in Zoom. So,
Totally.
yeah, I think that's a great tip for everybody. How can we diversify what's happening during the course of our day so we're not just in the seat all day in front of the screen? Amazing.
I think that's an important point, incidentally. Just let's normalize the old-fashioned phone call again,
Yeah.
and people taking walks, and there's a lot sometimes you need to be in front of a computer, but often, like, not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, a couple minutes ago, you were sort of starting to go down a thread
Mm.
of helping people collaborate better, helping people solve problems better. And as I kind of previewed, we want to dig a little bit more deeply into that. I think when people think about governance,
Mm.
first of all, healthy collaboration might not be the first thing that comes to mind based on what we're seeing in the news lately. And secondarily, folks might wonder, what does this passion with facilitation have to
Mhm.
do with governing? Those
Mhm.
maybe might sound like different things if folks haven't heard about participatory government. And one of the things that I think that's kind of so interesting about this time we're in right now is we're seeing all these challenges happen at the national and state level in governance.
Mhm.
And underneath that, there's like this huge wave building
Mm.
of participatory governance that hardly anybody even knows about. And so maybe let's just start by understanding what is participatory governance, like what is that sort of jargon even mean? And then we can maybe get into a little bit more how healthy democracy has been really a leader in bringing that to the U.S.
Yeah, so I think it takes so many different forms. I mean, the idea is to sort of, as we see it, get to the meaning of democracy, which is people governing themselves,
Yeah.
and so that means lots of different things. It should mean lots of different things. It should be an ecosystem. There's no silver bullet. Anybody who's sort of pushing a branded product in this, no, not at all. It needs to be many different things, and owned publicly. Importantly, I think there are a fair number of things that have been done with good intentions in the
Mm-hmm.
participatory world that are still fairly tightly controlled and relatively authoritarian, actually,
Really?
extractive, or things that we might think of as traditional participatory methods. For example, focus groups or workshops or surveys and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
All good, need to be part of the ecosystem. But
Mm-hmm.
first of all, they often have such a strong self-selection bias that the representation
Mm-hmm.
is very bad, very, very
So let's
disproportionate with
back
the
up one
public.
step, though. So
Hmm.
just so folks maybe who have never even heard about what is a participatory process, like
Yeah.
what do we mean by selection? How do people get selected to be part of a participatory governance process? And then what happens in like the kind of basic 101?
Totally, yeah. So these traditional methods often there's sort of an open to anyone in theory, but not really in practice. So
Mm-hmm.
what the gap that we're trying to fill in on the who's in the room side of things
Yeah.
is selecting folks by what we call a democratic lottery, or sometimes called a civic lottery. And a
Mm-hmm.
very old method that sends out. There's different ways of doing it, but in general, often it's a number of mailings. Let's say 10 or 15,000 households get a mailing that
Mm-hmm.
says you're invited. You're going to be paid substantially. Your input is not just being taken away, but is going to be somehow really powerful in a government process. You're going to be speaking directly to power. These are some of the key things that we want to say right away.
Mm-hmm.
And then we want to also make the barrier to entry as low as possible. It's not an
Mm-hmm.
application process. You don't have to fill in any questions. You don't have to speak any particular language, etc. You just have to respond with who you are and that you can commit to certain dates and with your demographics. So the Democratic Lottery, because of these even when we're reaching out to people proactively like this,
Yeah.
the response rates are so disproportionate to the population
Mm-hmm.
on age in particular, educational
Mm-hmm.
attainment, geographic location, etc., that yes, those things like pay and proactive outreach help a lot,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't go nearly far enough. And so then there's what we call stratification, sort of in a scientific way, but this is the lottery, another random and representative
Mm-hmm.
process. We put all these names of people that responded and all of their demographics into an algorithm with the proportions of those demographics in the population. So if we've got 50-50 men and women in a certain area, then we might have 60-40 women and men. That's typical in terms of response rates for us. But it goes through this process, and out the other side is a randomly selected group of folks that that reflect the public, 50-50 men and women in this case. A city in one room.
Yep. So that sounds a little bit complicated.
Yes.
So let's recap real
Yeah.
quick. Okay. So sounds like the difference between participatory democracy and maybe what folks might be used to is that rather than maybe like calling or writing a letter to your representative in government, you're actually getting selected to be part of a small group that advises them. Is that right?
Totally. Exactly.
Okay. And how you get selected is piece of mail comes. So in a city or town, if you're doing this, about how many pieces of mail would you normally send out?
Yeah, sometimes somewhere 10 to 15,000 I feel like is typical. We've done less, we've done more. Sometimes small geographies, it's much less. Or it can be done in organizations as well, or other kind of bodies that have a list that they want to select from. And
Got it. So there's a randomly selected list. If I get on the list, then kind of like if I randomly get selected for jury duty, now I've got my invitation. And now I can respond to it. And if I do respond, then it's going to be another selection process that's random from that.
Right.
Is that okay? And so what you're saying is maybe because not everybody responds, because many of us do maybe think, why would my voice be worth raising in this setting? Why would this be worth my time with government behaving as the way it has been recently, right? So for any myriad of reasons, that could be one. There could be dozens of others. People might not respond. And then that creates a little bit of an imbalance. But the goal, right, is to get a representative group that looks and is like the same kind of demographics of the community. Yeah.
In this case, yeah.
And so once those folks get in the room, how many of them are there? And then what happens?
Yeah, so just to clarify, this is because the participatory world is big and has lots of different things. What we're talking about here is a civic assembly or the lottery deliberation world, technical.
Yeah.
But let's not go there. But there's so many words in these spaces, aren't
Yeah.
there? But yeah, in a civic assembly, it's lottery selected, and then folks come into the room. The other, the important part to us is to sort of democratize and turn over power throughout this whole process. So to make folks feel like to treat these prospective delegates, we call them, as if they were elected officials coming into office, that kind of thing, with deference and sort of respect that one would expect if you were just elected onto council. And so we're giving them sort of orientation as one might give to a new council member, but also making it not as stodgy as our existing system. This should be fun. It should be accessible to people from all walks of life and ages. And part of that is sort of getting over one of the many barriers that you alluded to, which is the sort of esoteric nature of our processes right now, and how they, really, when you think about it, it's a very specific way of acting and a very specific set of rules, social rules, and like kind of process rules. So we're trying to strip that away and just let people be people with each other and make them feel like, hey, it doesn't matter where you come from, what your education is or experience or whatever. You're here, you're equal with everybody else in this room. We're going to support you as much as you need. And so that's kind of the basis. Of course, that doesn't create equality in the room. All the inequalities of the outside world, come into a room like this, but we're attempting to sort of mitigate even the playing field. And then the process itself is hopefully doing that much more than any of us as organizers or facilitators ourselves. That's one of the mistakes, I think, often of facilitation, is we try too hard to do it ourselves or think it's about the individual facilitator that needs to make this happen. No, it's much more a design problem, I think. And we need to make the space that will allow people to do it for each other and themselves. That's the sort of democratization of the process itself. So what that means, for example, is that moderators and us as an organization never get involved in the content of a topic. The content belongs exclusively to the assembly. Down to...
And those are the participants that got those invitations, yeah?
Right.
Great.
Exactly. And what I mean by content is like, if we're dealing with a land use issue, anything about that issue.
Yeah.
So we care about the process a lot, but it's not our role. We see this as a really necessary separation to maintain the power of the assembly. We're their support staff. on the process side, where they're technical advisors on the process side. They've
Love
got
that.
other technical advisors and support from city staff or from consultants or lots of different community members with lots of different views who are going to support them on the content side. And so what that does over time is it actually means that our process role also reduces. So moderators sort of may have a more active role, kind of maintaining group agreements and helping to orient folks to where the process is early on. By the end of the process, the folks themselves, the delegates, are doing a lot of self-facilitation and helping to, hey, we agreed a couple of days ago to treat people with respect when they had a difference of opinion. I'm seeing an issue here. Something that a facilitator might do, you start to see folks in the room actually do because of this sort of ethos of constantly attempting to turn over as much power as possible. I didn't really talk about the sequence of events in the process.
Please do. Yeah, I was just going to ask you, what happens in the room?
Yeah.
And how long are we in the room?
There's a lot of theory level stuff, but yeah, the process is one of the things that's maybe more traditional. We go through a kind of a typical planning process, a lot of information gathering up front, and that obviously that may be a whole half of the assembly. So we may be talking about 5-6 days in this assembly. We've done ones that are as much as 10-12 days long, full days. We're talking 100 hours in some of these cases. Which is an important feature, incidentally, time. There's no substitute for time. But the whole first half may be all about information gathering. It needs to be from many, many different sources. That itself needs to be democratized and transparent, not hand-picked experts by city staff or anything like that. The opposite of that, there's its own sort of deliberative processes. And then that builds into a sort of sorting of information done, again, exclusively by the assembly delegates themselves, never by us. We're not summarizing anything, that kind of thing. And then into a deliberative process around usually values, principles. Okay, we're seeing these sort of big ideas. Let's start to pick out sort of the high-level values here. And then working on often a sort of brainstorming phase. What are the different options we're seeing? What are the proposals we're seeing from different interest groups? And let's just get those all onto the wall. And then sort of working through, maybe piecing those apart, actually, and sort of putting them back together again. And by the end, probably cohesing, is that a word? Bringing several things, cohering, there we go. Several different kinds of proposals together, prioritizing, lots of different rounds of prioritizing throughout this process. Lots of big group stuff to small groups, to bigger groups, to big group, to small group, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Editing to a final product. And importantly, the final product is also authored exclusively by the delegates themselves, down to the very last comma and period.
By the participants.
Right.
Yeah. Amazing. So, Linn, there is so much here, and this time has absolutely flown by. As you know, we work on participatory democracy as well. We're excited about partnering together with you. And I think we've both observed that it's so different when people go through a process like this than a traditional town hall where you maybe get your 2 minutes and your note card. And if you're lucky, you get called on. It's like a one-way conversation. And I think we've both seen people walk away from these experiences just with smiles, with high fives, with a light shining in their eyes. If you had to boil down to one sentence, like what creates the magic? What one thing that is happening? I know it's not really one thing, but if you had to kind of prioritize one that is happening in that setting that creates that magic, what would you kind of pick as the top number one?
I used to say things about sort of dialogue across difference and things like that. I think what it is now to me more is public ownership over public policy. We need public ownership, not just public involvement or engagement. No, that's great. But what we really need is public ownership to feel like we own our democracy. We know how this works. We're a part of it. We're using government as a tool. It's not just an entity that's doing things to us or for us or at us, but we're exercising that tool with our, fellow people in our society all the time.
Love that. Yeah, everybody has the capacity to help make the public policy that affects our daily lives. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we will put links below for folks to get involved with Linn. But if folks want to hunt you down and want to get engaged without no chainsaws, if they want to get engaged with healthy democracy, or they want to figure out a next step to take in their local community, how do they find you?
Yeah, so we reach out to us at info@healthydemocracy.org or healthydemocracy.org, and we can put you in touch with groups of advocates around the country who are working to try to infuse this into government, to do it outside of government in nonprofits, to find other sort of permanent ways to institutionalize these kind of assemblies. So we can just connect you with wherever you are.
Yep. And what's one simple step if I'm like, wow, that sounds like a little much for me, but maybe there's just like one tiny step that I could take in my local community. Any thoughts on what that might be?
I think one great in is actually the dialogue world, which is, I mentioned sort of dialogue across difference. There's a lot of organizations like Bravery Angels is the largest one that sort of helps to, help you to learn some really practical skills about talking to folks who disagree with you, which is something that's built, a muscle that's built in the first half usually of these sort of assemblies, but is something that there's lots of groups doing now, especially over the last decade or so, and often can be an on-ramp into this sort of deliberative policy making, which also depends at the end of the day on relationships and people talking to people. So I think that's a first great step.
Amazing. Well, thanks so much, Linn. And thanks so much to all of you who tuned in. There's another important thing that you can do right now to really help more people in your community flourish and thrive. And that's subscribe, like, share this content. We are trying to help more and more people know that these options for building community together actually exist. And you know how it goes with the algorithm. You got to get that interaction in order to reach more people. So just simply by interacting with this podcast and with the posts that we are putting up associated with it, you can actually make a big difference in helping more people find their way to flourishing and thriving and helping their communities do the same. Thanks so much, Linn. And I'm going to be challenging you to get on stage the next time you come down. We're going to have to do a deeper dive with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Brandon.
You bet.